The atmosphere inside ABC's pristine headquarters was suffocating, a taut stillness so dense it seemed to press against the walls, unbroken by the faint hiss of coffee machines churning out their bitter brew. The sharp scent drifted through the newsroom, a feeble attempt to drown out the electric unease that crackled beneath the surface, anxiety coiling tight, like the charged air before a lightning strike. Beyond the towering glass panes, the city pulsed with its restless heartbeat. Horns shrieking in jagged bursts, footsteps pounding across crowded intersections, a symphony of chaos that never paused. Yet within these sterile halls, polished to a corporate sheen, a quieter, deadlier tempest was unfurling, a disintegration so insidious it crept up unnoticed until it was too late. The staff had dared to believe the worst was behind them, their fragile truce with normalcy holding just long enough to exhale. Then Karoline Leavitt struck, her presence ripping through the silence like a thunderbolt splitting the sky, announcing a reckoning no one could outrun. Her first lawsuit had already been a grenade tossed into the View's carefully curated world, blowing apart its polished facade and exposing the cracks network executives had scrambled to plaster over. That initial legal strike had sent shockwaves through ABC. A PR disaster, a legal quagmire, a test of damage control that stretched the network to its breaking point. The headlines had screamed for weeks: accusations of defamation, whispers of behind-the-scenes sabotage, a public unraveling no one could ignore. Yet somehow they'd convinced themselves it was over, that the outrage would fade, the lawyers would settle it, and the news cycle would move on. They were dead wrong. Because this time Karoline wasn't just fighting back. She was going for blood. The breaking news hit like wildfire, tearing through dry brush. Karoline Leavitt had filed a second lawsuit, not some half-hearted jab or desperate Hail Mary, but a full-on legal assault, calculated and ruthless, a juggernaut impossible to sidestep. The airwaves crackled with speculation as analysts raced to unpack the implications, their voices tense and urgent. Social media erupted into a frenzy, hashtags trending, memes multiplying, outrage boiling over. The View had barely clawed its way out of the wreckage of her first case, and now it was staring down a tsunami that threatened to swallow it whole. For Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar, the first reaction was disbelief, a stunned silence that stretched just long enough for the reality to sink in like a punch to the gut. They'd told themselves the storm had passed, that their high-priced lawyers had buried the mess, that the public's attention would drift elsewhere, but Karoline wasn't playing their game. This wasn't just another courtroom spat. It was a reckoning, a blade aimed at the heart of their empire. And this time, losing didn't just mean a bruised ego or a dip in ratings. It meant the potential collapse of everything they'd built. The legal papers landed at ABC like a wrecking ball crashing through glass. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was an autopsy of the View's inner workings laid bare for the world to see. A brutal exposé that left executives reeling and attorneys reaching for the nearest bottle of bourbon. Karoline wasn't after a quick payout. She was peeling back the curtain on an industry that had thrived on its own unchecked power for decades. Her accusations cut deep, merciless, unrelenting, and backed by a mountain of evidence that made jaws drop and pulses race. Court documents painted a chilling picture, a meticulously planned campaign to humiliate her on air and bury her career for good. Pages of email chains revealed top brass plotting how to paint her as problematic, that slick industry buzzword for anyone who dared defy the script. Text messages between producers read like a script from a gritty political thriller, short, sharp exchanges dripping with cynicism, laying out how to spin her as a liability. Media execs, showrunners, even well-connected journalists, all in on it, conspiring to ensure she'd never work in TV again. It was a takedown so cold-blooded it could have been ripped from a House of Cards episode, and just when it seemed the damage couldn't get worse, it did. Buried in the filings was a bombshell that sent ABC's legal team into a tailspin. Secret recordings. Not rumors, not hearsay, real, raw, unfiltered audio of the View's hosts and executives mapping out a smear campaign with surgical precision. They knew they were twisting the truth beyond recognition, and they didn't care. "Make it stick," one voice hissed in a grainy clip. "She's done if we play this right," another chimed in, cold as ice. These weren't offhand rants caught on a hot mic. They were deliberate, calculated moves to destroy a career, captured in damning clarity. Karoline's legal team wasn't just dragging them to court. They were setting the whole system ablaze. And the kicker? She wasn't asking for pocket change. Her demand was a number so massive, so crippling, that boardroom chatter shifted from, "How do we fight this?" to, "Can the View even survive if we lose?" The moment her second lawsuit hit the headlines, the show's set turned into a war zone. Polished outrage replaced by whispered panic and barely contained fury. Producers darted between offices, flipping through legal memos like they might find a magic loophole to make it all disappear. Phones buzzed incessantly with calls from network higher-ups barking orders. "Fix this, now, make it go away." But the truth was stark and brutal. There was no containing this. It wasn't just another messy headline to spin into oblivion. This was a legal sledgehammer swinging straight for the show's foundation. Backstage, Whoopi Goldberg stormed into the green room, her usual swagger faltering as her phone lit up with a call she'd been dreading. An executive's voice crackled through, tight with urgency, words clipped like gunfire. "This isn't just bad, Whoopi, it's catastrophic, the kind of thing that could sink us all." For a heartbeat she froze, her face a mask of steel. Then she spun on her heel, marched to her dressing room and slammed the door so hard it rattled the walls. Inside, she paced like a caged animal, phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip, firing off texts to her legal team with a fury that bordered on desperation. No answer. Then a vague, "We're working on it," that only fueled her rage. "Are you kidding me?" she snapped when she finally got someone on the line, her voice slicing through the room. "How did this happen again? Who let her get this far?" Joy Behar's reaction was almost a dark comedy. When an assistant first mentioned the lawsuit, she waved it off with a smirk, rolling her eyes like it was some cheap tabloid stunt. "Oh, please," she scoffed, flipping through her show notes without a glance up. "She's just fishing for attention, another conservative grift." Then she saw the filing, really saw it, and that smug grin melted into something uglier. There it was in black and white, allegations stacked with hard proof, a coordinated plot to tank Karoline's career, receipts that didn't lie. Joy dropped the papers on the table, her fingers twitching as she reached for her phone, her bravado crumbling into a quiet, simmering dread. Meanwhile, the pre-show production meeting was a train wreck in slow motion. Sunny Hostin didn't waste a second, her voice cutting through the room like a blade as she rounded on the producers. "How long have you known about this?" she demanded, eyes blazing, sharp enough to make the assistant director flinch. "If this has been brewing for weeks and nobody told us, we've got a serious problem." Across the table, Alyssa Farrow Griffin stayed silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. She'd seen the cracks in the View's armor before. This wasn't her fight to defend. Sarah Haynes fidgeted, refreshing news feeds on her phone, clinging to a fading hope that some last-minute miracle might swoop in and erase the nightmare. Spoiler, it wouldn't. Outside the studio's chaos, ABC's corporate offices were in free fall. The View had always been a high-stakes gamble. Controversy was its lifeblood, keeping it relevant in a cutthroat industry. But now the numbers weren't adding up. If Karoline won this case, if even half the evidence held up in court, the payout wouldn't just sting, it'd be a death blow. Whispers started circulating behind closed doors. At what point does this show stop being worth the cost? For the first time in years, no one had an answer. For Whoopi and Joy, this wasn't just another bump in the road. It was a crisis unlike anything they'd faced in their decades on air. The cameras barely stopped rolling before Whoopi stormed off the set, her face a storm cloud of controlled rage. By the time she hit her dressing room, that control snapped. The door slammed shut with a bang that echoed down the hall, rattling framed posters of past triumphs. Inside, she paced furiously, phone in hand, thumbs flying across the screen as she bombarded her legal team with demands. Calls went unanswered or met with vague murmurs that only stoked her fire. "Are you kidding me?" she barked into the line, her voice raw with frustration. "She's dangerous, vindictive, hell-bent on burning this show to the ground. And you let this happen?" She blamed the network's lawyers for fumbling the first lawsuit, the producers for keeping her in the dark, but most of all, she blamed Karoline Leavitt, a name she spat like a curse. Beneath the anger, though, something darker flickered: fear. Whoopi had been in this game long enough to spot a losing hand. Joy unraveled in her own messy way. She'd laughed off the lawsuit at first, brushing it aside like a bad joke. "Another day, another whiner," she'd muttered. Then the full filing landed in her lap, the legal jargon, the evidence, the sheer weight of it, and her amusement curdled into panic. She gripped her phone tighter, dialing anyone who might have answers, chasing reassurance that never came. ABC's execs weren't confident they could win this, and that realization hit her like a brick. This wasn't just a PR hiccup, it was a real threat, and Joy Behar had no intention of going down with the ship. By day's end, she was done, storming toward the exit with a parting shot tossed over her shoulder to a stunned production assistant. "If we lose this, I'm out." Between Whoopi's fury and Joy's rising panic, one thing was crystal clear. The View was in deep trouble. Upstairs, ABC's executive war room was a pressure cooker ready to blow. The meeting had started as a calm crisis briefing, suits around a polished table, voices measured, plans laid out. That lasted about 5 minutes. Now it was a full-blown meltdown, voices overlapping, accusations flying like shrapnel. A senior VP, usually the picture of cool-headed control, was practically vibrating with rage as he shoved a stack of leaked emails across the table. "Somebody tell me," he growled, his voice low and dangerous, "how the hell we didn't see this coming?" No one answered. He didn't want an answer. He wanted a scapegoat. "Do you have any idea what we're dealing with here?" he pressed, jabbing a finger at the sprawled legal docs. "This isn't some Twitter troll with a grudge. This is a legal assault with receipts, actual, undeniable proof." His voice rose, booming off the glass walls. "How did we let it get this far?" Across the table, the head of legal exhaled sharply, hands clasped like she was praying for a miracle. "Because we didn't take her seriously," she said, her voice clipped, each word a bitter pill. A deadly silence dropped over the room. The VP's jaw clenched so tight it looked like he might crack a molar. "Say that again," he hissed. She didn't flinch. "We didn't take her seriously," she repeated, her tone flat but firm. "We laughed it off, brushed it aside, figured it was just another conservative tantrum we could ride out. And now," she leaned forward, palms flat on the table, eyes hard, "now it's too late to ignore her." The PR chief, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke, his voice strained like a man on the edge. "This lawsuit isn't just about money. It's not even just about the View. If those recordings go public in court, we're talking a scandal that drags the whole network down." He paused, glancing around the room, letting the weight settle. "You all get what that means, right?" More silence. They got it all right. This wasn't just the View's mess anymore. It was ABC's. And if they didn't stop it fast, it'd burn everything to the ground. ABC had handled scandals before, lawsuits, controversies, bad press. They'd weathered political firestorms, public backlash, and the occasional live segment train wreck that sent Twitter into overdrive. But this was different. This wasn't a tabloid blip that had vanished in 24 hours. It had claws, and they were sinking deeper by the minute. The crisis team jumped into action, drafting a playbook. Step 1, downplay the lawsuit. Release a vague, non-committal statement that acknowledged the filing without admitting a damn thing. Step 2, gag the hosts. No on-air rants, no off-script meltdowns, nothing to fan the flames. Step 3, reach out to Karoline's lawyers, float a quiet settlement, make it disappear before it turned into a media bloodbath. Simple, clean, effective, except for one massive hitch: Karoline wasn't biting. When an ABC rep made the call, the response came back like a slap. "Karoline has nothing to say to you, we'll see you in court." That's when the real panic kicked in. If she wasn't taking the money, if she wasn't looking for an exit, it meant she was in this to win, to fight, to tear it all down. And worse, the public was rallying behind her. The second the lawsuit hit the news, the internet exploded. Within minutes, Karoline's name was everywhere. "Karoline vests a View. ABC in crisis. Justice for Karoline," the View exposed. It wasn't just a trend, it was a wildfire, a movement that crossed political lines. Conservative outlets pounced like sharks smelling blood. Fox News splashed the headline across their site. "Karoline Leavitt drops bombshell lawsuit on The View. This time she's not holding back." The Daily Wire gloated. ABC execs in panic mode. What are they hiding? Independent commentators had a field day, one YouTuber going live with a gleeful rant. "I knew The View was shady, but this is corruption on steroids." Liberal media scrambled to spin it. CNN called it a political stunt. MSNBC sneered that she was weaponizing the courts for clout. The New York Times hinted at shadowy conservative donors pulling strings. But the spin fell flat. Nobody was buying it. The public didn't need talking heads to tell them what to think. They had the evidence, leaked emails, those chilling recordings, Karoline standing her ground in real time. The verdict was in, and it wasn't in The View's favor. Comment sections lit up with fury. They've been lying for years, and now they're caught. ABC thought they could silence her. Now she's making them pay. I don't even watch The View, but this makes me despise them. Then the memes rolled in, a digital gut punch. Someone photoshopped Whoopi holding a sign, "Lawsuit incoming." A clip of Joy fake laughing got captioned, "Joy when she realizes she might actually get fired this time." By noon, ABC's headquarters was edited to look like it was engulfed in flames. By midday, the lawsuit was the top trending topic in America. By nightfall, conservative media had wall-to-wall coverage. By week's end, it owned the news cycle, and ABC was losing, badly. No amount of PR magic could stop this storm. The internet had picked a side, and it wasn't with The View. The lawsuit didn't fade. It grew teeth. For years, The View had dodged scandals, survived blow-ups, and shrugged off bad takes that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. But this wasn't a slip-up they could sweep under the rug. This was a beast with staying power, and it was putting ABC in a chokehold they'd never faced before. Behind the scenes, the network was spiraling. Internal emails leaked hourly, showing execs in full meltdown mode, scrambling to wrestle the narrative back before it swallowed them whole. Emergency meetings burned through the night, PR teams tossing out tired tactics, deflect, deny, stay silent. Nothing stuck. The fire was too big, too hot, and the worst part, top brass weren't just mad at Karoline, they were furious at Whoopi and Joy for dragging ABC. The backlash wasn't one-sided anymore. Major advertisers were getting skittish, some quietly pulling sponsorships, others demanding answers. Scandals could be cleaned up, but money walking out the door? That was a death knell. Ratings had already been slipping, forcing The View to lean harder into controversy just to stay afloat. This time it backfired spectacularly. Loyal viewers started doubting their allegiance. Conservative audiences, long ignored by ABC, were now spearheading a cancel campaign with ruthless glee. Then the real red flag, rumors of a shakeup at The View. Whispers spread. Some said ABC was mulling over firing key hosts. Others claimed the network was debating axing the show entirely. An industry insider put it blunt: The View's on life support. If this lawsuit digs any deeper, ABC might have to pull the plug. Cancellation, a word never dared spoken aloud, was now a real threat. Whoopi and Joy tried to play it cool, brushing off the chatter like it was just another media blip. But privately, they were unraveling. The writing was on the wall. ABC couldn't afford another lawsuit, another scandal, another hemorrhage of viewers. For years, The View had thrived on stirring the pot. Now the pot was boiling over, and Karoline Leavitt was the one holding the match. She'd ripped through their shiny image, forced ABC into a corner, and left them with a choice they never thought they'd face: stand by their embattled hosts and risk it all, or cut ties to save the sinking ship. Because this wasn't just about one lawsuit anymore. It was about whether The View could survive. As the media world shook, everyone waited for Karoline's next move. Would she back off, cut a deal, give ABC an out? The answer came fast and fierce: hell no. Karoline Leavitt wasn't playing defense, she was on the attack, and she was done letting the mainstream media twist the truth and silence dissent. She was flipping the script, staying 10 steps ahead while ABC flailed behind closed doors. She hid behind PR fluff. She came out swinging, her words raw and direct. For years, The View has gotten away with distorting facts and crushing voices they don't like. They've attacked people with zero pushback, thinking they're untouchable. That ends now. Her statement lit a match under the media tinderbox. Social media erupted again, her words ricocheting across platforms amplified by journalists, pundits, and everyday folks fed up with networks peddling their own agendas. Hashtags flared anew, and this time, it wasn't just conservatives cheering her on. It was people from all sides, united by a shared disgust at the hypocrisy. Then came the leak that changed everything. A major conservative outlet dropped secret recordings from inside ABC's corporate lair. The audio was a gut punch. An exec's voice, clipped and panicked. "We should have shut this down sooner. This lawsuit could expose more than just The View. If we don't get a grip, it'll peel back the curtain on how we handle everything here." It was the smoking gun critics had prayed for. ABC wasn't just caught off guard. They were terrified of what Karoline might unearth. That same week, she stepped up to a podium at a press event, her voice steady, her gaze unflinching. "This lawsuit isn't just about me," she declared, the crowd hanging on every word. "It's about truth. It's about accountability. It's about holding the media to the same standards they shoved down everyone else's throat." The audience roared, cameras flashed, reporters scrambled to keep up. ABC? They had nothing. No rebuttal, no defense, no way to dodge the reality crashing down around them. For once, The View wasn't steering the story, it was being crushed by it. Backstage, producers bickered over damage control, legal teams fired off frantic emails, and execs fought to contain a beast that refused to be tamed. Yet Whoopi and Joy still thought they could talk their way out. They decided to hit back live, on air, taking Karoline head-on. It was a mistake that'd define their careers. The next episode of The View aired with a tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Whoopi sat rigid, barely hiding her irritation. "I just want to say something real quick," she started, her voice laced with a forced calm that fooled no one. "This whole lawsuit? Ridiculous. We've always been about open talk here. All viewpoints welcome." Joy jumped in, shaking her head with a smirk. "Come on, it's a political stunt. Some folks can't handle strong women speaking their minds, so they run to court and play victim." The audience clapped, but it was tepid, uncertain. Something was off. Within minutes, social media lit up with blowback. "Whoopi says all viewpoints are welcome? The same Whoopi who stormed off when a guest disagreed," one user fired off. "Joy calling Karoline a victim? That's rich. She spent years shouting down anyone who challenges her," another snapped. Then Joy, clearly fed up, leaned in with a sneer. "This is what they always do, come on our show, stir up drama, then run to conservative media crying about it." Whoopi nodded, chuckling darkly. "Same game every time, they just want the spotlight." That was the moment it all fell apart. Hours later, clips of Karoline's interviews resurfaced, calm, sharp, loaded with evidence, side by side with Whoopi and Joy's mocking rants. The contrast was brutal. Karoline looked like a warrior armed with facts. Whoopi and Joy came off as petty bullies grasping at straws. Their credibility tanked. ABC execs tried to ride it out, but the backlash snowballed. Then, an internal memo leaked. The network had ordered the hosts to shut up about the lawsuit immediately. Whoopi and Joy ignored it, thinking they could out-talk the fire. Instead, they poured gasoline on it. ABC had to act fast. They yanked the episode from streaming, scrubbed clips from YouTube, issued a stern warning, "Stop escalating or else." For years, Whoopi and Joy had owned the narrative, drowned out dissent, shaped the story to their liking. Now they were on the ropes, and for the first time, they couldn't talk their way out. "They're panicking because they've never been held accountable," one commenter nailed it. "They can't silence Karoline like they've silenced everyone else. That's why they're scared." ABC faced a brutal choice. Keep backing Whoopi and Joy and risk The View's collapse, or cut them loose to save the network. Karoline had already proven her point without another word. ABC had nowhere left to run. The fallout wasn't just a PR mess. It was an industry earthquake. ABC had misjudged from the jump, betting the storm would blow over, that they could spin it like always. They were wrong. The internet wouldn't let go, and every move Whoopi and Joy made to dodge blame only tightened the noose. People rewatched old clips, dissected The View's history, and saw the pattern. A show built on shutting down voices it didn't like, now cornered by its own game. ABC had to ask the unthinkable. Was it worth saving Whoopi and Joy if it meant torching the whole network? Panic gripped the corporate offices. Daily emergency meetings, execs on endless calls, searching for an escape hatch before the lawsuit spiraled further. They floated, forcing Whoopi and Joy to apologize, a scripted mea culpa to cool the heat. But neither would budge. Whoopi, livid, reportedly snapped at producers. "I'm not apologizing for a damn thing. I've been here longer than half these clowns." She wasn't just digging in, she was daring ABC to push her. Joy doubled down too, scoffing at the idea of backing off. The network wasn't just worried about them anymore, they were terrified of what a trial might expose. Years of buried dirt, silenced guests, orchestrated smears. Advertisers started bailing. Quietly at first, then louder, pummeled by customer backlash. Money talks, and it was walking away fast. ABC faced a grim fork in the road. Suspend Whoopi and Joy to calm the storm? Issue a statement distancing themselves from their own stars? Or, unthinkable until now, cut ties entirely. For the first time, execs whispered, "Is it time to let Whoopi and Joy go?" Karoline wasn't done. The lawsuit had already rocked the industry, but her team hinted at something bigger, a domino effect. Rumors swirled. Other ex-guests, fed up with The View's tactics, were reaching out. What if this wasn't just her fight? What if it was the spark to burn down the whole media machine? Years of selective outrage, controlled narratives, erased voices. ABC's worst fear wasn't losing in court. It was losing the illusion they'd built. The question wasn't, can The View recover? It was, can it survive? And for the first time, that question echoed inside ABC itself. Karoline Leavitt had done the impossible, forced a media titan to face its own hypocrisy, and she was just getting started. As the dust settled, ABC stood at a crossroads, its once unshakable empire teetering on the edge of ruin. Karoline Leavitt had ignited a fire that refused to die, her lawsuits peeling back decades of media arrogance to reveal a truth too long buried. Power unchecked breeds corruption. The View's fate hung in the balance, its hosts scrambling, its executives cornered, its legacy unraveling in real time. But this wasn't just about a show or a network. It was a wake-up call for anyone watching. Karoline's fight whispered a lesson into the chaos. Courage can topple giants. She didn't just demand justice, she redefined it, proving one voice, armed with truth, could shake an industry to its core. For us, the message cuts deeper. Stand up when it's hard, when the odds stack against you, when silence feels safer, because that's when change begins. Accountability isn't a gift handed down. It's a battle fought and won. And when the powerful hide behind their towers, don't flinch. Shine a light, speak out, hold fast. Karoline showed us that empires fall when people rise, so rise. The storm she unleashed isn't over. It's a challenge to us all. Be the thunder that breaks the silence.